Not long after Anakin Skywalker betrayed Mace Windu and allowed him to be killed by Palpatine, the Chosen One would turn to the dark side and become the Sith Lord Darth Vader. As Darth Sidious would send Vader to the Jedi Temple to eliminate all the Jedi in the temple, he would also activate Order 66, which would cause all clones to turn on their fellow Jedi generals due to their inhibitor chip. Order 66 is by far one of the most emotional and tragic events that take place in the entire Star Wars saga. Just like thousands of Jedi spread across the galaxy, Ahsoka Tano would also witness Order 66 firsthand and would have to deal with the consequences of surviving the Jedi Purge as well. Ahsoka Tano's thoughts right after Order 66 had taken place are explained in detail in the canon Ahsoka novel by E.K. Johnston. Ahsoka looked down at the grave, her heart a stone in her chest. She thought about all the clone troopers she had ever served with. They had been so quick to accept her, even when she first became Anakin's Padawan. Part of that was their genetic code, but that only went so far. They respected her. They listened to her. They taught her everything they knew. And when she made mistakes, when she got some of them killed, they forgave her. And they stood beside her again when it was time to return to battle. The Jedi were gone, but what happened to the clones was almost worse. Their identities, their free will removed with a simple voice command and the activation of a chip. If Ahsoka hadn't seen it for herself, she wouldn't have believed it was possible. She felt completely alone in the Force, except for the dark nothingness that stared back at her every time she tried to connect with Anakin or any of the other Jedi. More than anything, she wanted a ship to appear, for Anakin to track her down, or one of the other Jedi to find her. She wanted to know where they were, if they were safe, but there was no way to do that without compromising her own position. All she could do was what she had decided to do, go to ground. She should have been at the temple, she thought. She should have been with Anakin. She should have helped. Instead, she'd been on Mandalore, almost entirely alone, surrounded by clones and confusion and blaster fire. Maul had escaped, of course. She had the opportunity to kill him, but had chosen to save Rex instead. She didn't regret that. She couldn't regret it. Now there was only the grave. Everything about it was false, from the name listed on it to the name of the person who'd killed him. It looked very real, and you couldn't tell clones apart when they were dead, especially not if they were buried in another one's set of armor. Ahsoka held her lightsabers, her last physical connection to the Jedi and her service in the Clone Wars. It was so hard to give them up, even though she knew she had to. It was the only way to sell the con of the false burial, and it would buy her some safety, because whoever found them would assume she was dead too. But Anakin had given them to her. She'd walked away from the temple with nothing but the clothes on her back, and had struggled for a long time to find a new place in the galaxy. When she had found a mission and reached out to her former master for help, he'd reached back and given her the Jedi weapons to do the job. He'd accepted her return, and it felt like a failure to leave the lightsabers behind a second time. She turned them on and told herself that it was their green glow in the dark night that made her eyes water. How many Jedi were buried with their lightsabers today? How many weren't buried at all, but left behind like so much garbage, their weapons taken as trophies? The younglings? Had they known what to do? Who could they ask once their teachers had been cut down and slaughtered? She stood quickly and resisted the urge to call the lightsabers back into her hands. They must be left there, as a trophy for the coming Imperials to find. And they were coming. Ahsoka could feel it in her bones. She had a ship, unremarkable and well built. Captain Rex was already gone, his false death inscribed on the marker in front of her, and the false report of her death at his hands credited there as well. When they were digging the grave, they'd agreed to go their separate ways and head for the Outer Rim. It was chaotic there, but it was a sort of chaos where a person could get lost. The chaos on the core worlds was motivated by Palpatine's new peace, and if Ahsoka tried to hide herself there, it would only be a matter of time until she was found. She placed a hand on the grave marker and allowed herself one more moment to think about the man who was buried there and the man who wasn't. She thought about her master, Anakin Skywalker, whom she could no longer sense, and the other Jedi, whose absence was like an open airlock in her lungs. With determination, she shut it. She stopped looking for Anakin through the connection they shared. She stopped remembering the clones, alive and dead. She turned back and walked to her ship. She wondered what she would say when she got to a new planet and someone asked her who she was. She knew her name was on a list of supposed criminals. She couldn't safely use it anymore. She couldn't say she was a Jedi, not that she ever could have done that in a good conscience anyway. She'd given up that right. Now she paid the price for abandonment. Ahsoka focused on the things she knew was for certain. She was Ahsoka Tano, at least for a little bit longer, and it was time to go. Seeing Ahsoka have to go through Order 66 in the Clone Wars Season 7 was hard enough, but getting to see her internal thoughts and struggles is really heartbreaking. It just shows how much she cared for Anakin and all of the clones, but she knew she had to let them go if she wanted to survive in the new galaxy. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video and learned something new, feel free to like and subscribe. And remember, the Force will be with you always.